So good evening, everybody, and welcome to this very special edition of Meet the Judge. I hope everybody's had a very happy and safe Christmas.
Indeed.
Today would have traditionally been Dublin Dog Show. And it's hard to believe that it is a year ago to the day since the last Albury Championship show in Ireland. I'm joined tonight by somebody who is very well known worldwide, FCI All Breeds judge. Brand stock prefix is synonymous in this country with Yorkshire Terriers, bichon, frise, probably the leading kennel in Yorkshire Terriers. Rita is very well respected and renowned, particularly for being very sympathetic with exhibits and exhibitors, and also has been treasurer, a former treasurer of the Irish Kennel Club, former board member of the Irish Kennel Club, and of course for more than 30 years secretary of Dublin Dog Show. So I'd like you to welcome Rita McCarry Beattie. How have you been coping, Rita, with the lack of dog shows this year?
Oh, it's been a nightmare. Literally not meeting any of my friends in the flesh, not having the opportunity to see how their dogs are doing, and it's been awful, I have to say.
And do you think they'll start anytime soon?
It's not looking that way yet.
No.
We have to wait and see how effective the vaccine is, I suppose, and it'll take them at least till mid-summer, I would imagine, if not autumn, before the vaccinations have been completed. So that doesn't leave us very much time to run dog shows for the remainder of the year.
This is true. So when you were growing up, were your parents involved in dogs? Were they involved in showing and breeding?
Well, when I was about 12, when my mother bought 2 Cocker Spaniels from a Mr. Joe Buckley.
Okay.
And one of them became a show dog because Joe was coming to trim them, and when he saw them, he went, "Oh, Bran is the show dog here. Would you consider taking him to a show?" And my mother said, "Okay, if you insist." And Joe agreed to handle him and everything, and he did extraordinarily well. He would have been a champion in those days if he had done the field trial, but he had the sufficient points to become a champion, and he's the brand stock prefix, which I inherited from my mother.
And you had German Shepherds prior to that, did you?
A German Shepherd, which my father showed, once.
Once?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
At Dublin Dog Show, when it was held in Rathmines in the barracks.
In Cannelbrew Barracks?
Cannelbrew Barracks, yeah.
Very good. And so, your own first breed?
Well, my own first breed was a cocker also. Melba, my first cocker. She wasn't officially in my name, but she was given to me as a Christmas present, and I showed her, and she was bred from, and she was difficult to get mated, and she was mated very late in her season, and she went into labour, and Joe, of course, was there to help my mother deliver, and at about 11:30 or 11:45 that night, they came to my room and said, "We think Melba needs you to be on hand to have these puppies. She just would not deliver for them." So I went down, and the first pup was born almost immediately, and everyone was delighted. And then there was another one, and then there was another one, and then there was another one. And eventually she stopped after having 11 puppies. 11 puppies. 9 bitches and 2 dogs. Yeah, at a time when you couldn't sell a bitch puppy to anybody.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was my first. That was my first time delivering puppies, and I've been doing it ever since.
And then you decided to move into Yorkshire Terriers.
Yes.
And what was it about Yorkshire Terriers that appealed to you? What made you decide?
Well, at the time, there were a number of prominent Yorkshire Terrier breeders and exhibitors in Ireland, and I found myself attracted to this breed. They were gorgeous looking things, and they were glamorous, and the shiny coats and trailing the ground and so on. But when you actually spoke to the dogs themselves, the intelligence, the personalities, some of them would go mad and try to wash the face off you, and others would go, "Don't touch me, you. Do I know you?" So I loved that. And I still do love their independence and their terrier-like confidence, and just the personality of the breed is unique.
And your first Yorkshire Terrier?
First Yorkshire Terrier was, what's his name? I've forgotten. Tuca, yeah. Tuca was the first Yorkie I showed, Brandstock Pele. And he did very well. And he was the right size and very well bred, very, very nicely made. At the time, top lines were a massive problem in the breed, and he had a dead level top line. Okay. And he moved. When he moved, he held the top line, and that contributed to his win a lot.
So how long did it take you to actually achieve that actual champion title? Did it take long to break into the breed?
Yes.
Because Yorkies were quite strong then.
Yes, and as Tuca was a bit dark in colour and didn't break as he should have done at the age, the longer it took, the more that became a significant fault that he was still not blue. But his movement and his top line, and he had a lovely head, won out luckily, and he got his title.
But he was a difficult little sod, wasn't he?
Oh, extremely. Totally unique and very independent, and he had to be in the humour to show in order to perform. And
in the early days of starting off in Yorkshire Terriers, and even indeed when you were starting off showing, were there people that influenced you greatly?
There were, of course. I have to say the Yorkie exhibitors of the time were very welcoming and very helpful and considerate. I mean, Tony Lyons, who had quite a considerable successful history, and Olive Taylor, of course, who became a very good friend and remains a very good friend, and some older that recently retired exhibitors were so helpful to me and allowed me to use their stud dogs and so on. I was very lucky that I got a lot of support and help. And of course, Eileen O'Connor, who had great experience in the breed, was also someone who gave me wonderful advice and knew what she was talking about from her grooming experience as well. She taught me what I needed to do to get the coats and all of that.
And Ross Buckley would have given you great help also.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
The late Ross Buckley.
Yes.
And terrier people.
Yeah.
I know that a lot of terrier people influenced you throughout your...
Yes, they did. And Joe Delmar and Fenton Fitzgerald and people like that who just gave me broad knowledge of what the difference between a gun dog and a terrier, personality wise, and what I needed to do to get it into. I think I was probably less strict with Yorkies initially because I thought they were small and I might frighten them and so on. And in actual fact, I had to learn that they are little brats and they are not going to do what you want them to do unless they're slightly afraid you might get cross with them.
This is very true. This is very true. And I just interject there now. We've got a lot of viewers from around the world and from Finland, Belgium, the UK, Ireland, of course. So you're all very welcome. And And you've already explained how you brand stock is your prefix, obviously, and how that has arrived. But you were very successful in Yorkshire Terriers, and then you decided to move into bichon frise, and you were on the ground floor when bichon frise came into the country. Again, what attracted you to bichon frise? And
well, at the time, the first bichon frise puppy I ever saw was when my mother and I were attending a seminar in Bagot Street, and in the hall we used to have in Bagot Street, and Michael Code attended, and he brought with him 3 bichon puppies, and he couldn't manage all 3 of them, and sat down beside my mother and I, and we each had a puppy on our knee for the entire seminar, and they were adorable, and they were so sweet, and such pet dogs, basically, that both my mother and I were taken by them, and we said to Michael, well, if you have one, if you have one in the immediate future that's available, we might be interested.
Okay.
And that's how we started.
And just going back to Yorkshire Terriers now, and bearing in mind that there is a lot of dog theft, etc., going or continuing at the moment. Back in the early days, early 80s, you had a Yorkshire Terrier stolen from St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
Which must have been very difficult at the time.
Yes.
And how did you deal with that?
I had such great help from the dog community. Everybody knew that she had been stolen, and they were on the lookout at all times, and it became very common knowledge. The canine press got it into the national press, and everybody knew that Glory was stolen. So the owner, the person who took her, obviously realized there wasn't much he could do with her, because it was too well known. And thankfully, after 2.5 weeks, he phoned me and said that she was down in a convenience store in Rathmines, and my father said he would drive me, that I wasn't to go down by myself, but he asked then a neighbour to step in with my mother in case it was a device to get us out of the house so that they could come in and rob the place. And I drove down to the store, and I went into the store, and I went up and down the aisles, and suddenly saw the box, and there she was. Yeah, she hadn't eaten a thing in the time she had been away, and although there was food in the box, she hadn't touched it, and she was emaciated, absolutely emaciated. And I got on to my vet, John Costello, on I returned to the house, and he said, don't give her any solid food, just give her liquid tonight, and do it gently and gradually. And he said, I'll take a look at her tomorrow. And he did look at her the next day, and he said she'll be okay. She's not. And
this would have been Penrose bound for Glory, who was bred by, of course, Eileen
O'Connor. Yeah. And she was a gift. She was literally a gift. Eileen had was going to show in the UK at the time, some Dachshunds, and her Yorkie bitch was due to whelp, and she asked me would I mind supervising the delivery of the puppies, and I said I wouldn't mind in the slightest. And so I went up and spent the night there and delivered Glory and her brothers and sisters. And when they were 8 weeks old, Eileen asked me to come up to the house and said, pick one, it's yours. And she was not only a very, very successful Yorkie in the ring herself. In her lifetime, she produced 4 champions. She was superb.
She was superb. And I just, Susan Weiss is just asking, do you prefer showing Yorkies in the toy group or the terrier group?
Oh, the terrier group. By a country mile, the terrier group, because they're little terriers. And I have to say, the terrier people have been superb. I thought that they might perhaps allow their dogs to intimidate Yorkies in the group ring. the absolute opposite is true. And the only dog attacking anything in the terrier group is the Yorkie.
This is true.
And I think the terriers go, "You're wearing a bow. What, are you real?" You know, what's that on your head?
And of course, the next dog just before you was a Staffordshire Bull Terrier.
Yeah. And there hasn't been a single incident in the terrier group with me or with anybody else in Yorkies. They have been absolutely amazing. You know, when I remember when I was a child, the sparring that used to go on in terrier groups, and that would have been very intimidating if it still happened.
Do you think?
Well, yeah, but with the Yorkies would go mad.
And as an exhibitor, what do you think has been your biggest achievement?
Oh, as an exhibitor. Well, winning best in shows, I suppose. But
And you've had quite a few successes with Yorkies with winning best in show. I mean, Victory Assured won many years ago best in show at Munster Agricultural Show, which was really Yorkshire Terriers rarely did win best in shows.
Yes.
But also in bichons.
Oh, well, I had in partnership a bichon with Maura Denmark, bred by Eileen O'Connor, another Penrose. And he had a brother in the ring, a little brother in the ring at the same time, who was presented and handled by and owned by Marie Hamill. And Liz Wogan had a very nice bichon winner, and Mary Renahan had a very nice bichon dog also winning. And so my boy was stunningly sound, and he was beautiful making shape, but he was a little on the big side for the standard at the time. He'd be fine now, but he was a bit big for the standard at the time then.
And this would have been Penrose Challenger, bred by Eileen O'Connor.
Yes. And so getting to win the class was the hardest thing in actual fact. Bruno only managed to win the class 4 times, but each time he won the group. And then each time he won best in show. And it was just amazing. That's how he got his 40 points, because he was getting the extra points. There were not that many bichons in the ring at the time, and they were all in open dog. That's how he got his magical 40 points at the time. And the funniest one was the last one, because he had won. It was when Hibernian was held in Navan, and he had won the breed, and then he went and won the group, and then judging best in show was Millicent Ingram, and she had judged him the week before in the breed, and she had given him 4th in the class. So I was not expecting anything. And as she handed me the best in show rosette, she said, "I bet your heart sank to your boots when you saw who was doing best in show, but it's a different competition." And she handed it to me, and it has stuck in my head, and will always stay in my head. It is actually a different competition.
It is.
You know, and his glamour and his soundness and all of that stood him in good stead. But she was penalising perhaps that there was a bit much of him when there were smaller ones available.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. And as I said earlier, brand stock is synonymous with Yorkshire Terriers. Is very successful kennel and also bichon frise. So when you are choosing to breed a bitch to a dog or whatever, do you study pedigrees, or do you use your eye, or is it a combination of both?
It's a combination of both. You have to know if a particular dog's good points are strong enough to go to the next generation, or whether he accidentally acquired them. And so, and the same with the bitch, you know, but at the same time, the things like is one of them glamorous? Is a significant thing, I think, because if there is one glamorous one, the puppies have a chance of having a bit of glamour, and that's important, as well as, you know, providing they're healthy and sound. A bit of glamour is quite important.
And so, when did you actually start judging?
I started judging at lower level in the very early 70s, and I started judging at Green Star level in the late 70s.
And in the early 70s, when, as most, well, a lot of us will remember, limited shows and open shows were hard fought competitions. I mean, you know, you had a lot of dogs at these limit shows, and fierce rivalry. So they were I've lost the word I'm trying to think of. You put your feet right into the melting pot when you started judging at limit shows.
Yeah, absolutely.
Back in those days.
Yes.
Yes,
they were a very good learning ground.
Yes.
Yeah, and all your friends were out under you.
And
you know, because all your friends from all breeds would be there, because there were all breed events, and you had to learn to give your opinion of the dog, not necessarily of the person who owned it.
And somebody, Jane Hayward, is just asking us, how far back do you look in pedigrees?
At least 3 generations. At least 3 generations.
Yeah. And when you started judging, and I know, again, many years ago, there was a very proactive judging, sort of, the All Terrier would run judging seminars, etc., etc. What was the best piece of advice you were given before you started judging?
To remember that people would be offended when you didn't like their dog, but that they would get over it. And eventually you will get yourself a reputation for judging the dogs as you see them, and people will respect you for that. And it was Joe Dalmar who said it.
Did you, at that time, did you ask advice of other judges? Do you think it's important for aspiring judges now to ask questions of breeders, established exhibitors, and experienced judges?
Absolutely. You'll get conflicting views, but you will find that some successful person will have the opinion that suits you best. And you can think, well, I'm all right. You know, that's what I think, and that's what I would be, the way I would be comfortable judging. And if he or she can, you know, be successful doing it that way, and that's the way I feel I should be doing it, then that's good. That's grand. But not everybody judges slightly differently, you know. And if they didn't, there'd be no point. There would be no dog shows.
This is true. This is true. I think it's probably Michael Forte is asking us. You had a wonderful Yorkie called Archie. Did he go to Thailand?
Yes, he did, and was very successful there, and is still very succceul there.
And Archie was quite successful here, although quite different when he came here.
Yes, he was a very different Yorkie when he arrived. He was bred by Kay Morris, and he was absolutely beautiful. But he was a different type, because Kay bred him in America, and he was a different type to what was currently showing here. So he struggled a little bit here, but he was stunning.
He was, and you are All Breeds FCI. So when did you achieve All Breed status, and roughly how many countries have you judged in?
I achieved All Breed status, I think, in The 90s, we thought. I don't know for certain, but I think it was the 90s, the late 90s perhaps. And I have judged on every continent, but I have no idea how many individual countries I have judged in, but quite a few. And thankfully, I think a number of times in the same country, and I think that's flattering.
I'm just reading another comment here now, just bear with me for a second. Yeah, Rita has great connection with puppies and juniors whilst judging, and has given top awards. So does Rita think judges should look down the line to the younger ones and not only the champions and opens?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if some dog in any class catches your eye, it's a contender. They're all contenders, and I genuinely believe that if you have a type and you see your type there and it's got no major faults and it's healthy and sound, gosh, you can't not consider it.
I think that's very true, actually. So aside from your own breeds, Yorkshire Terriers and bichon frise, is there a breed that you really like judging?
Yeah. I don't know why, but poodles. Poodles. I see poodles. I don't know why, but I do, and I've had flattering comments from poodle exhibitors here in Ireland and in the UK, from just comments I've made while watching poodle judging, and I get a superb entry when I'm given poodles in foreign countries. So, and I just love the breed, and I don't know why. They're a very glamorous breed, of course, and so on. But yeah, I like poodles.
I feel somebody's here is just saying a true matriarch was Osie. A very loyal bitch and a firm favourite. Wherever that's coming from. But yeah, and I have to say, actually, we were judging in Australia. We were lucky enough to get to Australia earlier this year, and I happened to be doing poodles, and I found what I thought was a beautiful standard poodle, and I eventually gave it to group, and Rita's doing best in show, and I think she's never going to like this. I mean, she's so hard on poodles. I thought, I'm never going to find a poodle to say, but thankfully, Rita thought it highly enough to give it best in show. But it really was a beautiful poodle.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
So, is there a fault that really irritates you?
Yes, and I think almost everyone who knows me knows what it is. It's upright shoulders. I find upright shoulders really offensive because they destroy the outline of the dog. They shorten the dog's neck. They can affect how the elbows sit, and they will affect the front movement. So I think it's a very serious fault because it has so many ongoing effects that are negative to a dog. So I find it hard to forgive a forward placed shoulder.
And top lines in American Cockers.
Yeah, it affects the top lines, yeah. It affects the top lines too, yeah. Well, it creates a dip behind the shoulders.
Yes. Yeah. Critiquing. Do you like critiquing? Do you think it should be introduced on a wider basis?
I think, yeah, if the critique is honest and fair, I think exhibitors can learn from them. And it's good to know why, if you're going to give a dog less than excellent, why you did so. What was the fault that offended you enough to do that?
And the CQ system.
I think that's excellent. I think it's a.
See what you did there.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very good system, because it is important that if a dog is very healthy, very sound, has no major fault, and is moving soundly in both directions, why it should not get an excellent. However, dog showing is a beauty competition. And some dogs that meet the description that I have just given are plain.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not champion quality because they don't have that je ne sais quoi. Now, there's lots of dogs of varying qualities that have the oomph factor, and you've got to discount it in those cases. But when you are giving this dog is worthy of the title of champion, I think it has to be very sound and very healthy and very, no major fault of any description, good temperament, but also have that glamour, the attitude of who's going to be second. Look at me, I'm gorgeous, because that's what makes a champion.
Mm-hmm. And do you think we should introduce it here?
I'd love it here. Yeah, I'd love it here. Because I think, as I say, I think some judges, because we don't have it, unfairly give a dog a very good or a good because they don't want to give it a green star. But it isn't so badly faulted that it requires such a low grade. It is just not champion quality. But once you give an excellent here, you've got to give the ticket.
This is, yes.
You know?
Yes. And we've all had them. Irate exhibitors, how do you handle them?
Well, because I'm still an exhibitor myself, I can seriously empathise with how they feel, and I feel that we can't go, I'm the judge and that's my opinion, and, you've got to explain calmly to them why you did it, and don't apologise, because that's what they've paid you to do, or they've paid the society, is to get your opinion, but and they don't have to agree with it, but if you give it to them in a rational and reasonable fashion, most will calm down.
Yeah. And in terms of your judging career, what would you think has been your biggest judging achievement?
Oh, I would have to say judging Best in Show and St. Patrick's Day. That was a huge honour. I was going to St. Patrick's Day shows before I ever showed a dog. So yeah.
And you've done many club shows also in the UK and etc. And do you think that judges have a role in the development of breeds? And if yes, do you think that a lot of judges these days understand that?
Yeah, of course we do. And whilst that wasn't so obvious in, say, the 1930s and so on, when there was no DNA, it was very difficult to correct faults that had health faults that had emerged in breeds like hip dysplasia and things like that, because we now know that, now that we have genetics, that you need 2 genes to pass on hip dysplasia, and that is why if one of the mating had 1 gene and the other of the mating had the other gene, suddenly you had a litter with almost, with several cases of hip dysplasia. So I think we have come a long way since DNA was discovered in actually correcting a lot of the health issues that have occurred in lots of breeds. The only real problem we now have is the popularity that some breeds attain. Like, for example, how many Christmas cards did everybody see with pugs on the front or French bulldogs? And these breeds are so popular now that the brachycephalic part of it is ignored by the breeders who breed to make money. And they're churning them out, totally disregarding that the fact that they may not be able to breathe as they get older. And when you look at the bulldog, who is not that popular as a pet dog, look at them now. 20 years ago, judging bulldogs, you would say, oh, it's having breathing difficulties on the move. Now they're flying around the rings and they're not even panting. I couldn't believe it when I was watching Crufts on the telly last year, and there was obviously the hall had heated up considerably by the time the utility group came into the ring, and even the standard poodle was panting, and the bulldog was going around the ring at great knots, perfectly soundly, and wasn't panting at all. And I thought, God, we can cure these if people would just not make them so popular that the puppy farmers latch onto them. And
just touching on brachycephalic breeds, I personally know, and a lot of people know, that you have definite views on how kennel clubs should be dealing with this issue.
Yes.
Do you think that kennel clubs are dealing with these issues correctly?
I think they are being too conciliatory about it, insofar as I know from talking to vets here at Kennel Club level that all puppy farms are signed off by vets. Now, the Kennel Clubs aren't going to the press and saying the vets are allowing these people to continue breeding under these ridiculous circumstances. But they're blaming us. And our breeders are spending a small fortune at the vets, getting their dogs tested, getting all the relevant information so that they know whether a bitch is suitable to be bred from and that the sire of choice is suitable to be bred from. And we're given no credit for that, none whatsoever. So if they're discrediting all breeders for breeding, why can't we discredit all vets for allowing puppy farmers to exist at all?
And do you think that kennel clubs should adopt a common policy worldwide? Do you think FCI, British Kennel Club?
Yes, I most certainly do. I feel that we have got to. There's a lot of kennel clubs worldwide, and we need to join together and say, stop blaming the wrong sources for this, and let's give credit to the kennel clubs that allow endorsements against breeding until the dogs have had all the tests and that they're clear and all of that, which they all do, and that's all done in the best interests of the pedigree dog, who have survived, most of them, for hundreds and hundreds of years, and it's entirely due to the careful breeding of the people involved at the time.
And do you think we should be lobbying politicians on a more stronger basis, particularly Europe?
Yes, absolutely. But I mean, we have the FCI, which is a global kennel club, and we need them to allow us to say we're not apologising because we're the ones that are keeping them healthy. And we must be given credit for that. And we've got to get the authorities in each of the countries to stop the puppy farmers.
And again, if somebody Jane Hayward is just saying that her GSP was playing with young Frenchies today, and it just got her because there were no breeding issues, and they weren't handbag dogs. And somebody saying, I agree with a vet's attitude to puppy farms. My veterinary inspector for my kennels recently said that puppy farmers were providing pups for a market in the UK, and seemed okay about that. And this is also very true, because an awful lot of the pups that are farmed in this country are exported to the UK.
Yeah.
So that's where the market is. But unfortunately, as Rita says, vets are signing off on them. It's very difficult to know where we go with that. Can we lobby our own kennel club to maybe get a little bit more proactive?
Of course we can, and we get our kennel club to take it to the FCI, and we canvass other kennel clubs and get them to canvass the FCI, and we would make it. I mean, there's very intelligent people involved in all of these clubs, and they would make a great case. But we have got to stop allowing kennel clubs to be victimised and victimise the people who are the guilty party.
And again, and I keep citing it, and Rita, you were in American Caucus when this was transpiring. American Caucus during the 80s had massive problems with PRA and hereditary cataracts.
Yes.
And through careful breeding and line breeding and saying, no, that dog is a carrier, so therefore we're not using it.
It's virtually disappeared.
It has virtually eradicated. And I do agree that we perhaps should take our head out of the sand and be a little more proactive in getting our kennel clubs to move on the issue. So now moving slightly on and coming off of the list, 4 dinner guests you must have, that past or present. I won't limit you to 4.
Oh no, don't do, because I've given this so much thought and it's taken me ages to whittle it down. I would have to have Tom and Kay Creamer, because they were so kind to me. I've known them since I started. We all started at the same time, showing Caucus, and my family and them, and Kay took great care of me and was like another mother, and Tom always encouraged me to get involved and to apply myself to not just showing and breeding, but also to kennel club work and business and so on. And so I'd have to have both of them. And then another couple who were so good and friendly and helpful and kind were Fred and Anne Cuthbert. And Anne still is, and became very good friends, and were extremely good to me, and just supportive, would always give you advice and be friendly, and Tom and Kay always were concerned about me after Dublin Dog Show.
Indeed.
And used to make dinner for you and I, so that we could have dinner in their house on the way home, which it was for us on the way home from the show, because we'd been up very early and working all day and hadn't. She said you couldn't possibly go home and cook meals. Ridiculous. I'll do that. So that sort of thoughtfulness was just so appreciated. And of course, Eileen O'Connor. And her mum too, Dee Diskin. They were so kind to me and so helpful, and anytime I had a problem or a query, because Eileen was breeding Yorkies long before I was, she would, if I had difficulty getting a mating, she would always give me a hand, and did it with a heart and a half, and also gave me glory. So I have a lot to be grateful to Eileen for.
And as I said earlier, Brandstock is probably one of the most successful Yorkshire Terrier kennels. That is probably the most successful Yorkshire Terrier kennel in the country.
At the moment, yeah.
Is there a judge or breeder that you really admire in Ireland or in the rest of the world?
Oh, of course. Well, I have reason to be extraordinarily in awe of Richard Haynes, who I have had access to Ibiracum dogs and bitches, and beautiful, beautiful. He is so responsible. The soundness that he breeds, and the full dentition. They have all that they have. Absolutely, there are no inherent faults in Ibiracums. It's just a matter of getting the right coat and getting some manners on them, because they're little brats. They're real Yorkies. Yes. And of course, Kay Morris, who allowed me to have her reading, and I use Archie, and because she was the top Irish exhibitor of her time when she lived here before she emigrated to the States, and she won Best of Breed at Crufts countless times.
Yes. And moving on now slightly to little comedic, your funniest and most embarrassing moment as an exhibitor. Or a judge.
Well, no, it was as an exhibitor, and it was at Crufts a few years ago. Darby is still around. I mean, he's a retired champion now, but he was in his heyday at the time. But it Open Dog in that year had a huge entry, an absolutely huge entry, and a class that Darby couldn't countenance. It was too big. And when the judge said, take them round, though we couldn't go at speed because there were so many of us. And Archie liked to go at speed. Actually, Darby liked to go at speed and felt very, very constricted by the pace at which we were going. And in 2 seconds, because I didn't notice it in time, he shot his head out of his lead and did his own pace around to the very front of the walkers and identified his own box and jumped up on it. And there was nothing I could do. I was still stuck going round with an empty lead, and it was so embarrassing. And he was standing there going, what's keeping you? You know, here I am. Look, I'm on the box.
And he found his own box.
He found his own box, yeah. Oh no, he didn't. No mistakes made, except for me.
And Joyce Madsen's asking, do you remember the moths in the chalet at Banna Beach?
Oh, yeah. Do I what? Yeah, I do indeed.
Go on, explain. They must have been huge, were they?
They were everywhere.
And if you didn't live in Ireland and you could be transported to another country, where would you go?
I think I might go to Australia. Because the number of times I've been there, it has been a very pleasant experience, I have to say. And I am friendly with lots of people there that I've met, and I think I would.
And I think it's Sean Carroll is asking, I'm not quite sure, but are you going to miss Champion of Champions?
Of course I will. Of course I'll miss it. We would have been under a bit of pressure this year.
We would, in fairness.
Because our show would have been tomorrow, because Dublin Dog Show doesn't run on a Sunday ever. But we would have run our show tomorrow, and we would have been running Champion of Champions on Saturday. And that would have put a bit of pressure on, all right. And this Christmas was, I think, the first Christmas in our marriage that we didn't have some phone calls asking, sorry to ring you on Christmas Day, but I didn't get my ring numbers. Can you check if I'm entered? And such like calls. And there was a wonderful post. Where was it put?
Actually, I'm going off stream here, but I do have to read you a message that I received from Emer Wright yesterday evening, and it reads as follows. It's a little bit long, but I'll go with that.
It's very funny.
Hi, Colin. Few problems. My numbers haven't come yet. Can you post them now? My breeds are clashing. Can you change the order of judging? My judge doesn't suit me. Can you change them? I want to set my crates in the secretary's office. My mum has eaten too much the last few days, can no longer steward for you. I'll be there at 4 a.m. Can I park upstairs? That is Eva Wright, her wonderful sense of humour. It has it's somewhat typical of some of the questions you might get.
Yes.
Somebody's asking about falling out of the bath at Banna Beach. Oh no. That's falling out of the bath in the house. We won't go there. No. Okay.
No, we're not going there.
Yeah, Champion of Champions is very special to us on Dublin Dog Show. It's been very successful, and we are really going to miss it this year. And we have people who have qualified year on year. Susan White, Sean Carroll, Siberian Huskies, Anita Foley, and many of them. The late Austin, Anne Long Doyle, and Austin would have always qualified with the St. Bernard. And yeah, we are going to miss it this year, but
we are.
Hopefully we're going to be there next year. We'll be first in the queue for the vaccine, and hopefully this time next year we will be running. So, Rita, if you could write your epitaph, what would it be?
She wasn't as healthy as her dogs.
Sorry, I didn't know what that was. Yeah, going to be the answer. That's very good. That's very good. Look, it's been lovely chatting to my wife tonight.
Yeah, we don't talk normally.
No, we don't. Thank you all for viewing. We will be back next Saturday. I'll announce who is my guest later on during the week. It just remains for us to wish you all a very happy new year.
Indeed.
As I say, a year ago today, last dog show in Ireland.
Yes.
I hope
our 100th anniversary as well.
Be seeing you sometime in the new year.
Yes.
Hopefully June, July, and we'll be able to hug, chat, and see each other again.
We'll all be showing vaccination certificates to one another.
We will. And bruises. In the meantime, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you for reviewing, and see you next week.
Good night.